Xiaoyu never thought she'd end up being trafficked. The whole thing was like a ridiculous soap opera. She had gone on a trip, chatted happily with a kind-looking older woman on the train, and traveled together. But after drinking a beverage the woman gave her, she fell into a deep, groggy sleep. When she woke up, she found herself on a Kong bedstove, with an elderly couple and a middle-aged man standing before her, the man claiming to be her husband. Xiaoyu wasn't dumb. Even she knew she'd been sold. The middle-aged man, grinning with yellow teeth, moved his greasy face closer and sneered, "The girl's pretty nice. No one in the whole village looks as good." That 10,000 yuan was well spent. Xiaoyu had been pampered all her life. She'd never faced a situation like this before, and suddenly, every news story and TV show she had ever seen about human trafficking flooded her mind. Fear surged through her like a wave. Xiaoyu froze for a moment, then closed her eyes and screamed with all her might, "Murder! Help!" She was so terrified that she didn't even know why she was yelling about murder. But she really did use every bit of strength she had in that scream, and it was loud enough to make the middle-aged man and the elderly couple step back. Seeing how effective it was, Xiaoyu kept screaming, "Murder! Help! Someone's being murdered!" The middle-aged man and the elderly couple exchanged glances. Then the man grabbed a filthy piece of cloth from the bed and tried to stuff it into Xiaoyu's mouth. Xiaoyu had never been this fierce in her entire 22 years. She flailed her arms, kicked with all her might, scratching and biting as she fought them off. It was taking some time for them to restrain her, and with Xiaoyu still screaming for her life, a crowd started to gather outside the house. A booming voice echoed from the doorway. "Li Ergo, what's going on in here? You're disturbing my nap." Next, a tall, brawny young man, as dark and solid as a door god, pushed his way through the crowd and strode into the room. When the young man entered, he saw Xiaoyu struggling desperately, her face streaked with tears and snot, while Li Ergu and his parents stood by the bed, one holding her legs and the other covering her mouth. The young man froze for a second, then quickly marched over. With a few quick moves, like dealing with children, the young man shoved Li Ergu and his parents aside. He glanced at Xiaoyu, then turned back to glare at Li Ergu, his expression fierce and menacing as he asked coldly, "Who is this girl?" Li Ergu nervously smiled and replied, "A distant cousin. She's gone mad. Her parents didn't want her anymore, so they sent her to our family to recover." His parents chimed in with agreement, still holding Xiaoyu's mouth. Through muffled sobs, Xiaoyu wailed and shook her head desperately. The young man glared at each of them in turn, and as his gaze landed on them, they all lowered their heads. Then he shouted, "You're talking nonsense. Look at the clothes she's wearing. She's no relative of yours. I saw some shady people sneaking into the village a few days ago looking for you. You probably bought her, didn't you?" Li Ergu trembled and quickly waved his hands to explain, but before he could, the young man elbowed Li Ergu's father far across the room, then grabbed Xiaoyu and asked in a gruff voice, "Tell me, what's going on?" Xiaoyu realized that not only Li Ergu and his family, but even the crowd outside seemed to fear this young man like the plague. Clearly, he was some kind of village tyrant. Clutching onto him like her last hope, Xiaoyu croaked, her voice hoarse, "I was trafficked. I'm from the city, and my family has money. If you save me, I'll take care of you for the rest of your life." The young man hesitated, scrutinizing Xiaoyu's disheveled face. Her eyes were big and round, like a silly little deer. Despite the dirt and grime, her features were quite attractive. He almost lost himself staring, but quickly snapped out of it, tugging her off the Kong and saying, "Come on, let's go to my place first." Li Ergu tried to stop them, but the young man kicked him 2 meters away. Li Ergu clutched his groin in pain, unable to speak. At the young man's house, Xiaoyu was still shaken. The man was shirtless, his skin dark and his muscles bulging like a bear's. For all she knew, she might have just escaped one dangerous place only to end up in another. Her anxiety was written all over her face, and it was obvious to anyone who saw her. The young man brought over a basin of hot water for her to wash her face, rummaged around, and handed her a clean towel. "Don't be scared. I'm Zhang Dalong. Everyone in the village knows I've got a bad temper but a good heart." Xiaoyu wasn't sure whether to believe him. Zhang Dalong checked his watch and said, "There's still a bus to town. I'll take you home." As he packed his things, he asked, "Where do you live?" Xiao Yu quickly replied, "Just drop me at the long-distance bus or train station. I can get home from there. I live far away, in Luocheng." Zhang Dalong fell silent for a moment. Then he unlocked the cabinet on the Kong, took out a stack of cash, and stuffed it into a bag. "Let's go," he said. "It'll be dark soon, and there won't be any more buses." Xiao Yu patted her pockets and, fortunately, her documents were still in the inner pocket of her jeans, which were tight enough that they hadn't fallen out during all the commotion. She sat on the back of Zhang Dalong's motorcycle as they quickly left the village behind. By the time they reached the town, the sun was setting. Zhang Dalong led her to the bus station, told her to wait, and ran inside. Moments later, he came back with 2 tickets, handing one to her. "Hurry, we're running out of time. Get on the bus." He pulled Xiao Yu along, and as soon as they boarded, the bus, which had been waiting just for them, started moving. It wasn't until they were 2 miles out of town that Xiao Yu realized something. "Why did you get on the bus too?" Zhang Dalong coughed. "I was afraid you'd get trafficked again. I'll feel better if I take you home." Xiao Yu was skeptical, anxiety creeping back into her heart. She stared at Zhang Dalong. His thick eyebrows, deep eyes, high nose, and thin lips didn't give off a shady vibe. Still, she couldn't let her guard down. "You're really just sending me home?" Zhang Dalong glanced at her. "Didn't you say you'd take care of me for life at Li Erga's place?" "What? I saved you for nothing." Xiao Yu suddenly realized this was about repaying him. She sighed inwardly, lamenting how people just weren't as pure-hearted as they used to be. But at least the danger had passed, and she could finally breathe a little easier. As the bus rocked back and forth, Xiao Yu's body, exhausted from the fear and tension, began to relax. She closed her eyes, and soon, she was fast asleep. Zhang Dalong sat beside her, watching her peaceful face as she slept, grinning foolishly. "This girl sure is pretty." Xiao Yu and Zhang Dalong spent over 30 exhausting hours traveling by car and train before finally arriving in Luo City. As soon as Xiao Yu got off the train, she burst into tears, silently vowing never to leave home again. Zhang Dalong followed quietly behind her, all the way to her apartment complex. Xiao Yu hinted several times that he should just leave his number, assuring him that she wouldn't forget to thank him. But Zhang Dalong remained silent, simply trailing behind her. Xiao Yu was a timid girl, and if she hadn't been back in her hometown, Zhang Dalong might have scared her to death. Standing at the entrance to the complex, Xiao Yu tried to reason with him. "My parents are just regular teachers. They don't have as much money as you think. I only bragged back in your village because I was trying to survive. I admit I was wrong, but you can't really expect me to support you for the rest of my life, can you? I'll give you money, a good amount. Isn't that enough?" Zhang Dalong didn't say a word. He stared at the notice board at the entrance of the complex. Following his gaze, Xiao Yu saw the large characters. "Security guard wanted." Zhang Dalong chuckled. "No rush. When you have enough money to support me for life, we'll talk. I've got time." Xiao Yu opened her mouth, speechless. She brought Zhang Dalong home and explained everything to her parents, who were so distressed that they almost cried. After learning that they could file a report in another city, they wasted no time calling 110. After Xiao Yu and Zhang Dalong completed their statements, Xiao Yu's parents handed him 50,000 yuan, expressing their deep gratitude. Zhang Dalong waved it off, insisting, "It's my duty to do the right thing." Seeing him act like a righteous hero, Xiao Yu almost expected him to quote a martial arts movie with something like, "We must uphold justice and roam the world with our swords." Her parents, thinking their daughter had met an extraordinary man, were moved to tears. But Xiao Yu remembered what he had said to her when he brought her back. Looking at the stark contrast in Zhang Dalong's current behavior, she asked suspiciously, "Didn't you say you wanted me to support you for life? Why aren't you taking my parents' money?" Zhang Dalong, making sure her parents weren't watching, shot Xiao Yu a sly grin. "Why settle for 50,000 yuan when I can get supported for life?" Xiao Yu was so angry at his cunning smile that she nearly passed out. The next day, a broad-shouldered, burly security guard appeared at Xiao Yu's complex, sitting menacingly in the security office, glaring at everyone who passed by. Zhang Dalong had told Xiao Yu's parents that he wanted to find some manual labor in the city, work for a while to save up, and then return home for the new year. It just so happened that the complex was short on security guards as the end of the year approached, and since Xiao Yu's father was a member of the residential committee and well-connected with the property management, he arranged for Zhang Dalong to become the new security guard. The elderly residents in the complex all said that with someone like Zhang Dalong around, they didn't have to worry about thieves during the holiday season. Zhang Dalong, strong and friendly, often helped people carry their groceries or bags of rice, and within a few days, he had become well acquainted with the residents. Every day, when Xiao Yu left for or returned from work, Zhang Dalong would enthusiastically run out of the guard post to greet her, staring after her as if she were walking cash. Xiao Yu's head was about to explode. She felt like she had been conned. But there was nothing she could do. After all, she owed him. She didn't even have the right to complain, and could only force a smile whenever she saw him. Xiao Yu shared her frustrations with her boyfriend, Qin Mo. But Qin Mo didn't care at all, and impatiently interrupted her. Seriously, do you ever talk about anything but these trivial matters? Xiao Yu was stunned, then grew angry. You've been dismissing me like this for days. Am I still your girlfriend? If you don't want to be, then you're not. Qin Mo snapped, storming off, leaving Xiao Yu standing there, confused. Qin Mo and Xiao Yu worked at the same company. The next day, Xiao Yu showed up, pouting and expecting an apology, only to see Qin Mo proudly parading around with his new girlfriend, a trainee who had only been with the company for 2 months. If this wasn't cheating, what else could it be? Xiao Yu coldly watched Qin Mo bask in his new relationship, pretending she didn't care. After work, she hesitated outside a small restaurant near her apartment, then went in and downed half a bottle of baijiu by herself, laughing and crying at the same time. "Are you out of your mind?" a gruff voice said. Xiao Yu, bleary-eyed, looked up to see Zhang Dalong sitting across from her, frowning. "Haha, perfect timing. Drink with me." Xiao Yu grabbed the bottle to pour him some, but her hand slipped, spilling it all over the table. Zhang Dalong frowned even more. "Come on, tell me what happened. Did someone bully you?" Xiao Yu pouted and burst into tears. "Wah, I got dumped." From the first encounter, to falling in love and finally breaking up, Xiao Yu recounted everything to Zhang Dalong in a confused and scattered manner, not leaving out a single detail, including every argument she had with Qin Mo. She described everything in vivid detail. When Xiao Yu was tired of talking, she laid her head on the table and cried. Zhang Dalong, rubbing his temples, was tired from listening to her go on and on for what seemed like half a day. His ears were hurting, and he grumbled, "It's just like getting bitten by a dog. Who hasn't been bitten before?" Xiao Yu, half drunk, squinted at Zhang Dalong. "You've been cheated on too?" Zhang Dalong rolled his eyes. "Every girl in my village wanted to marry me. Do you think anyone could ever cheat on me?" Xiao Yu started sobbing again. "That's easy for you to say. You don't know how much pain I'm in." Zhang Dalong, now plugging his ears, looked at Xiao Yu, who was crying her heart out, sighed, and helplessly sat across from her, waiting. Eventually, Xiao Yu cried herself to sleep, snoring softly on the table. Shaking his head, Zhang Dalong quietly hoisted Xiao Yu onto his shoulder and took her home, handing her over to her parents. Xiao Yu's parents were endlessly grateful to Zhang Dalong. He smiled sheepishly and politely declined Xiao Yu's dad's offer to stay for a meal, then headed back to work, leaving Xiao Yu's parents to marvel. What a kind young man. The next day, once the alcohol wore off, Xiao Yu looked at her tear-streaked face in the mirror and recalled how she had rambled for hours about her failed relationship with Zhang Dalong. Suddenly, she realized she didn't feel as sad anymore. It was as if talking about it had brought her relief. Feeling a bit embarrassed about her outburst the previous night, she washed up and went downstairs. Zhang Dalong was at the gate, on duty. As soon as he saw Xiao Yu, he burst out laughing. "You were crying like a crazy old lady last night." Oh, it was hilarious. Whatever gratitude Xiao Yu had just started to feel vanished in an instant. She walked past him with a cold expression, saying, "If I'm a crazy old lady, you're an idiot." Zhang Dalong laughed even harder behind her, his booming voice startling a flock of sparrows. Hearing his loud laugh, Xiaoyu couldn't help but smile a little. When she arrived at the office, she learned that Qin Mo and his new girlfriend had been transferred to a branch office. The big boss himself had issued the order, stating that Qin Mo's frequent office romances were disrupting the company's unity and stability. Her department manager, Manager Chen, came over to console her, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze.
Xiaoyu, don't be sad.
Men come and go. The new ones will always be better than the old ones. Xiaoyu forced a smile and nodded, burying herself in work. That evening, there was a department dinner, and the conversation inevitably centered around Qin Mo's cheating. Everyone took turns comforting Xiaoyu, but the more it was mentioned, the worse she felt, until finally, she was completely down again. Once again, Xiaoyu got thoroughly drunk. Manager Chen, who had encouraged her to drink the most, naturally took on the responsibility of driving her home. In the back seat, Xiaoyu was dozing off when Manager Chen's car pulled up at her apartment complex. He got out, opened the back door, and called for Xiaoyu. Still half-conscious, Xiaoyu nodded and tried to get out, but Manager Chen climbed into the back seat with her, squinting at her and saying, "Xiaoyu, if you're not satisfied with Qin Mo, you can switch to me. I'll treat you well." As he spoke, his hands were busy too, moving from her face down to her neck, and then lower. Suddenly wide awake, Xiaoyu's hair stood on end, and she screamed, pushing Manager Chen away, but he quickly grabbed her. In desperation, she bit down on his arm, drawing blood. Manager Chen yelped in pain and let go, giving Xiaoyu a chance to scramble out of the car. But even though he had been drinking, he chased after her, shouting, "Xiaoyu, I'll treat you well." He caught up with her and tried to pull her into his arms. Terrified, Xiaoyu screamed for help, but she couldn't shake him off. Just then, a thunderous roar split the air. "Let her go, you bastard." Upon hearing that voice, Xiaoyu immediately relaxed. Zhang Dalong was here. In a few swift strides, Zhang Dalong crossed the parking lot, yanked Xiaoyu into his arms, and punched Manager Chen square in the jaw. Manager Chen cried out in pain and fell backward, hitting something that caused blood to pour from his head. Xiaoyu was terrified and quickly knelt down to check. It turned out it was just a small rock that had grazed his scalp. No serious harm done. She let out a sigh of relief. If Zhang Dalong got into legal trouble because of this scumbag, she would feel guilty for the rest of her life. Zhang Dalong was about to throw another punch, but Xiaoyu desperately held him back.
Stop.
"Your punches are too heavy. You might kill him." While they were struggling, Manager Chen got up and, in a panic, jumped into his car and drove off in a flash. Zhang Dalong glared at her angrily. "Why did you stop me?" Xiaoyu soothed him. "You got here in time. He didn't do anything to me, so don't hurt him. It's not worth it if it gets you in trouble." Zhang Dalong looked at her and chuckled. "You care about me?" Xiaoyu's face turned bright red. "You've got quite the imagination." Leaving Zhang Dalong grinning to himself, she turned and walked upstairs, wondering why her face was burning so much. The next day, Xiaoyu arrived at the company, ready to confront Manager Chen. If it happened one more time, she was prepared to report him, even if it meant risking her job. Deep down, Xiaoyu felt conflicted. Letting things slide was not an option. She couldn't swallow her pride. However, if she openly confronted Manager Chen, who was a favored aide of the big boss, her position as an employee was far from secure. Finding a job before the new year was challenging, and with her parents aging, Xiaoyu didn't want to rely on them financially. Sometimes, reality was just helpless. She had mentally prepared herself for the worst, but when she got to the company, Manager Chen was absent. A sigh of relief escaped her lips. She felt nervous about a face-to-face confrontation. As she was working, her father called. "Xiaoyu, what did DeLong do? Why did the local police take him away? It seems like another person came with the cops, and I think he's your manager from the group photo." Xiaoyu's mind went blank. Of course, Manager Chen was playing the victim. He knew Xiaoyu valued her job and wouldn't dare make a move, thinking the security guard could be bullied at will. Xiao Yu didn't know, nor did she want to find out. All she knew was that she didn't want DeLong to stay at the police station for even a minute. Just thinking about what DeLong might be enduring made her blood boil. She hung up the phone, grabbed her bag, and rushed out of the company, hailing a cab to the police station near her home. Once inside, Xiao Yu explained the events from last night to the officers, who then took her to file a report. Afterward, one officer couldn't hide his skepticism. If what you said is true, this young man was acting bravely. Why isn't he saying anything about why he hit someone? Xiao Yu paused, suddenly recalling that she had asked DeLong not to mention anything, so her parents wouldn't worry. This clueless guy, even at the police station, still remembers her words. Xiao Yu thought, feeling a warm sensation in her heart. The officers then reviewed the surveillance footage at the entrance of the neighborhood, which clearly showed that Manager Chun was the instigator, and DeLong only punched him once before Xiao Yu pulled him away. Manager Chun never expected Xiao Yu would risk her job to testify for a security guard. This completely contradicted his usual way of thinking. His plans had backfired, and now he found himself in the police station. As they met outside, Manager Chun smiled ominously. "Make sure you work hard, Xiao Yu." The emphasis was clearly on the word hard. Xiao Yu, probably due to spending too much time with DeLong, snapped back with an attitude. "Get lost. Who are you trying to scare? I'm quitting this lousy job." Manager Chen was left speechless, while the officer accompanying Xiao Yu stifled a laugh. Fueled by anger, Xiao Yu took a taxi straight to the company to resign. No matter how difficult it was to find a job, she wouldn't stand for this humiliation. However, upon arriving, she found the big boss himself asking her into his office to apologize, admitting that hiring such a person as a department head was his oversight. It turned out that after Manager Chin was taken away by the police, many female employees breathed a sigh of relief and reported to the boss that over 10 women had faced harassment from him. The big boss seemed to appreciate Xiao Yu. Among all the women harassed, she was the only one who reported it. Xiao Yu thought to herself that if it weren't for DeLong being taken away, she would have been among those wanting to avoid trouble. Then it hit her. She had completely forgotten to go pick up DeLong and clear his name. She hurried back to the police station, where DeLong was standing outside, looking around impatiently. When he saw Xiao Yu, he frowned. "Your dad called to tell you you couldn't even answer me?" Xiao Yu quickly smiled, speaking sweetly. "I just got here." This was the second time DeLong had come to her rescue, and Xiao Yu felt deeply grateful. DeLong wasn't going to let it go. Acting like a child, "I waited for ages, thinking you wouldn't come." With such sincerity, "How can I expect you to support me for a lifetime?" Xiao Yu frowned. "You saw the situation. I'm just an ordinary person from a regular family. I can't support you forever." DeLong laughed. "That's fine. I can support you. My family has land, chickens, ducks, fish, pigs, horses, cows, you name it." Xiao Yu was momentarily stunned, swallowing hard. She tentatively asked, "Are you trying to court me?" DeLong nodded vigorously, scratching his head as a hint of red crept onto his dark face. "You're worth it." Xiao Yu gulped again. "When did you start liking me?" With a serious expression, DeLong said, the redness on his face deepening. "At first sight. I noticed you when you were crying at Li Ergo's place." Xiao Yu scrutinized DeLong. He wasn't bad-looking, just a bit darker. After looking at him for a while, she found him quite appealing. Without realizing it, she subtly nodded. Seeing her nod, DeLong's eyes widened in disbelief. He let out a cheer, picked Xiao Yu up, tossed her in the air, and caught her, startling her into screams as she clung tightly to his face. DeLong winced in pain, but his smile grew wider. Zhang Dalong must have a loyal dog personality, Xiao Yu thought from time to time. Every time he saw Xiao Yu, he looked as if he wanted to wag his tail, his eager and passionate gaze reminding Xiao Yu of a golden retriever, even though others unanimously said Zhang Dalong resembled a Tibetan Mastiff. To be honest, dating Zhang Dalong was quite enjoyable. He was like a child with unblemished innocence, always exuberant, which made Xiao Yu excited too, humming tunes as she walked. Despite his rough appearance, he was surprisingly considerate and attentive. He had reached a level where he could tell just by looking at Xiao Yu whether she was hungry, thirsty, or tired. Without Xiaoyu needing to say a word, 5-star service was immediately at her disposal. His whole body seemed filled with a strong masculine aura, so when Xiaoyu went shopping with him, she felt safe no matter how late it got. Xiaoyu liked whoever treated her well. Now, whatever Xiaoyu ate, she thought about getting a portion for Zhang Dalong. When buying clothes, she would casually pick up something for him too, and even when going to the clinic for medicine, she thought about bringing him a box. Zhang Dalong was always grinning from ear to ear, following Xiaoyu around and calling her wifey. Wifey, I always knew you were beautiful and charming, but now I see you're quite virtuous too. Haha, I've struck gold. Xiaoyu felt proud at his words, wanting to walk with her head held high at a 45-degree angle. Both Zhang Dalong and Xiaoyu were open and expressive people, and within a week, news of their relationship spread throughout the neighborhood and reached Xiaoyu's parents. Xiaoyu's parents were educated people who couldn't accept that their son-in-law was a security guard. However, Zhang Dalong happened to be Xiaoyu's benefactor. After considering it, they invited Zhang Dalong and Xiaoyu home for dinner. During the meal, Xiaoyu was nervous throughout, knowing this was a setup. But Zhang Dalong was unfazed, eating and drinking happily, smiling at Xiaoyu's mom. Mom, this is delicious. Xiaoyu silently face-bombed, regretting having brought home such a clueless guy. Xiaoyu's mom sat there, feeling awkward, not knowing how to respond. Xiaoyu's dad cleared his throat. Xiao Zhang, you see, we are all educated people in this family, and we hope Xiaoyu's partner will also be someone like that. After saying this, Xiaoyu's dad looked at Zhang Dalong, hoping he would take the hint and back down. After all, he was Xiaoyu's benefactor, and it wouldn't be good to say too harshly. Xiaoyu's expression darkened. She looked worried and guilty at Zhang Dalong. They shouldn't make such comments. Who wouldn't be upset by that? Yet Zhang Dalong seemed completely oblivious, shoveling food into his mouth. Dad, don't worry, I won't embarrass you. I've watched Journey to the West several times. Xiaoyu's dad choked on his words, looking helplessly at Xiaoyu's mom. Xiaoyu's mom kindly stepped in to save the day. Dalong, we only have this one daughter, and we hope she can have a better condition when she gets married. Zhang Dalong, full of bravado, replied, Mom, don't worry. My family has land, chickens, ducks, fish, sheep, pigs, horses, and cows. She won't go hungry. Xiaoyu's parents were at a loss, collectively turning to Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu, you're still young. Don't you want to work hard for a few years in your careers? Xiaoyu put down her chopsticks. Dalong hasn't held me back from working. Xiaoyu's parents, who were originally gentle, were truly at their wits' end now, helplessly watching Zhang Dalong eat bowl after bowl, as he went on about how the meat in the city wasn't as good as what he had at home, boasting about how fat his pigs were. By the end of the meal, Xiaoyu's parents felt completely defeated, watching glumly as Xiaoyu and Zhang Dalong left to catch a movie. Once outside, Zhang Dalong's face fell. He looked at Xiaoyu with eager eyes and said, Wifey, did I embarrass you? Am I dragging you down? Seeing Zhang Dalong's hurt expression, like a small animal, made Xiaoyu's heart ache. She hurriedly touched his cheek and said, What nonsense are you saying? I'm happy every day with you. Isn't that the best kind of relationships? Zhang Dalong nodded, lowering his head in silence, looking a bit helpless like a child. Xiaoyu and Zhang Dalong had been dating for 3 months. People who had met Xiaoyu said she was becoming more and more beautiful, radiating a soft charm. Those who had seen Zhang Dalong remarked that he was getting more foolish, constantly wearing a silly smile. Xiaoyu wore a sweet smile every day, and as her colleague put it, she's so sweet. She could give someone a cavity. She could really charm anyone. Perhaps her colleague wasn't exaggerating. Qin Mo, who had come back to report on the company's performance, was once again captivated by her, staring at her all day long and trying to find ways to talk to her, but Xiaoyu skillfully avoided him. Her colleague mentioned that Qin Mo's new girlfriend had transferred to a branch office and quickly hooked up with a client, leaving Qin Mo in the dust. Now, Qin Mo was struggling to establish connections at the subsidiary, and with his girlfriend gone, he was overwhelmed with stress. Xiaoyu heard her colleagues talking about it and quietly walked away. What did it matter to her how Qin Mo was doing? The real issue was that Zhang Delong's belt was loose, and he needed to take it to get it adjusted after work. That was the important thing. Zhang Delong called, saying, "Wife, don't bother fixing the belt. I'll just buy a new one." Xiaoyu rolled her eyes and said, "You're just a security guard. How much can you make in a month? Why waste money like that? Save it for our wedding." With that, she hung up. Qin Mo's voice suddenly came from behind her. "Xiaoyu, I'm so sorry. After we broke up, you ended up with a security guard." Xiaoyu's face darkened, and she cursed under her breath. Turning around, she coldly replied, "What's wrong with being a security guard? Did he steal from your family? Rob you? Eat your food?" Before Qin Mo could respond, she shoved him aside and headed to the meeting. After a long day of meetings, Xiaoyu was busy and forgot to check her phone until she got into the elevator after work. There were several missed calls from Zhang Delong. The signal in the elevator was poor, so she planned to step outside to return Zhang Delong's call. However, when she reached the ground floor, Qin Mo stopped her again. "Xiaoyu, I used to be your boyfriend. I have a responsibility toward you. You need to think clearly about how disgraceful it is to be with a security guard." Xiaoyu had held back her anger for long enough. She couldn't contain it anymore. She spun around, pointing at Qin Mo's nose and shouted, "I know all about your troubles at the subsidiary. Even if being with a security guard is disgraceful, I like it. I'd rather be with a security guard than go back to you. Just think about how much you mean to me." It was rush hour, and people were coming and going in the office building, many stopping to watch. Qin Mo's face turned from blue to red, and he couldn't find the words to respond. Xiaoyu felt a rush of happiness. She finally vented her frustration. With a triumphant turn, she prepared to call Zhang Delong, but to her surprise, he was standing right behind her, his tall figure casting a shadow over her. Zhang Delong looked even worse than Qin Mo, his face pale. He looked at Xiaoyu, disappointment etched on his features. "You really don't respect me at all." Xiaoyu hurriedly waved her hands, trying to explain, but Zhang Delong cut her off. "Otherwise, you wouldn't say that." With that, Zhang Delong turned and walked away, his strides long and fast. Xiaoyu, wearing high heels, couldn't catch up, watching him disappear into the crowd. She quickly took a taxi home and rushed to the security room, only to find an old man sitting there. The old man told her that Zhang Delong had called to say he had to take a leave of absence and was going home. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a message from Zhang Delong, "I'm home. I'm heartbroken." Xiaoyu tried to call him again, but his phone was already turned off. Xiaoyu wandered around the security room, making the old man dizzy. He covered his eyes and said, "Go home, girl. You're making me dizzy with all this wandering. If Delong comes back, I'll have him come to find you right away." Xiaoyu forced a smile and shook her head, changing her spot to continue walking in circles. Since Zhang Delong left, her only entertainment after work was to circle around the entrance of the community. After about 10 days, her legs had slimmed down. Xiaoyu's parents were worried about her, but they didn't know how to help. Zhang Delong's phone remained off, making it impossible to reach him. Sometimes, when she couldn't sleep, her dad would sigh and say, "Delong is a good kid. Being a security guard isn't a big deal. He'll work hard in the future." The middle-aged women in the neighborhood also missed Zhang Delong. Without him, no one came to fix furniture or help carry heavy items. But the one who missed him the most was Xiaoyu. She sent countless messages to Zhang Delong, filled with apologies, reflections, and longing, making over 70 calls a day, checking if Zhang Delong had turned on his phone. She couldn't bear to see golden retrievers. Whenever she spotted one, especially those shiny black eyes, she would cover her face and cry, leaving the dog owners bewildered. Xiaoyu deeply regretted her impulsiveness and the hurtful words exchanged with Qin Mo, which had cost her the love of her life, her golden retriever. But time couldn't be reversed. What was lost. If it weren't for worrying her parents, Xiaoyu would have risked everything to find Zhang Delong, even if it meant tracking down Li Ergo's family. Sometimes, what you think about really does come true. Xiaoyu had been sold before and, after returning, reported it to the police. The officer who took her report had left her a phone number. Today, just as she thought about Li Ergo, the police called her. Xiaoyu answered the phone, listening quietly as the officer explained the situation. The bitterness on her face eased a little. The officer informed her that after she had left, Lee Ergo had planned to buy a house and get married. To avoid alerting the suspects, the police had waited until now, catching Lee Ergo and the old lady who sold Xiaoyu during their transaction, dismantling a major human trafficking ring. They needed Xiaoyu to identify and testify against them. Xiaoyu readily agreed. She remembered the pain of being sold and felt a surge of anger. If it weren't for Zhang Delong saving her, thinking of Zhang Delong, she couldn't help but feel sad again. But before long, she began to smile foolishly. If Zhang Delong could chase her to her home, now with police protection, she could chase him back to his home. Xiaoyu stood in the town police station with a face full of disappointment. She had completed the identification process, and damn it, both Lee Ergo's family and the old lady involved in human trafficking had been arrested. While Xiaoyu was identifying Lee Ergo, an older policeman beside her kept scrutinizing her. Once she exited the police station, the old policeman caught up with her, his loud voice booming like thunder as he introduced himself. He was Zhang Delong's uncle. Everyone in the Zhang family knew that Zhang Delong had been taken away by the girl Lee Ergo had bought. His uncle had specifically waited here to see what the girl who had kidnapped his nephew looked like. Xiaoyu felt a rush of amusement. Now she wouldn't even have to recall which household Zhang Delong lived in. She could just let his uncle take her directly to him. However, what his uncle said next nearly made Xiaoyu cry. Zhang Delong had returned home, but after a couple of busy days, he had left again. Xiaoyu was truly devastated. She had followed him all the way to his home and still couldn't find him. In this vast world, he had turned off his phone again, leaving her with no idea where to find him. Seeing tears welling up in Xiaoyu's eyes, the uncle felt helpless. He quickly took out his phone and made a call, then stood beside her on the roadside, watching her cry, unsure of how to comfort her. Xiaoyu was sobbing, feeling incredibly wronged. Even if she had said something wrong, Zhang Delong didn't have to treat her like this. She had chased him all the way here, completely losing her composure, and still came up empty-handed. Just then, a loud, rough voice shouted, "What's going on? Why are you crying before the New Year?" Xiaoyu recognized the voice and looked up to see a tall, burly old man standing in front of her, full of energy, resembling an elderly version of Zhang Delong. The old policeman let out a sigh of relief. "Brother, you finally arrived. Hurry and take the young lady home. She's been standing here crying for a long time, and I'm in uniform. It's bad for my image." The old man looked at Xiaoyu and chuckled. "My son has good taste. This girl is beautiful. Or else, why would she be trying to run off with my son?" Xiaoyu didn't hear what he said. She sniffled and asked, "Uncle, where did Zhang Delong go again?" The old man couldn't stop laughing. "That little rascal rummaged through the house a couple of days ago and took the savings book, saying he was going to pick up his wife." Xiaoyu immediately panicked, exclaiming, "I came all this way to find him, and he went to get another wife?" The old man and the older policeman exchanged glances and both burst out laughing, their loud laughter startling passers-by and drowning out Xiaoyu's phone ringing. Fortunately, Xiaoyu had her phone in hand and felt it vibrate. Looking down, she saw that it was a call from her father. Xiaoyu had come to identify and chase after Zhang Delong but hadn't told her family. She was afraid her parents would worry and not let her go out. Now that she had come up empty-handed and saw her family calling, Xiaoyu felt even more wronged and answered the phone with tears in her voice. "What happened? Who bullied you, dear?" came Zhang Delong's voice from the other end. Xiaoyu froze, holding the phone, unable to react. After 2 seconds, she suddenly yelled, "Where the hell have you been? Your dad said you have a wife. When did you get a wife?" The old man waved his hands, trying to clarify. "I said he was going to pick up his wife, but I never said he had a wife." Xiaoyu didn't listen to him at all. She cursed even louder, feeling more and more exhilarated. When she finally got tired of yelling and paused to catch her breath, she heard Zhang Delong laughing heartily on the other end, which made her ears ache. She quickly held the phone away from her ear. Zhang Delong was laughing so hard he could hardly breathe, saying intermittently, "My wife is you. If you look down on me, I went home to get the savings book. I'll show you. I have enough money to buy several houses in your area." Xiaoyu was stunned again. She could vaguely hear her mom's voice in the background. Is it really that profitable to start a farm in the countryside now? Why didn't you tell Xiaoyu earlier? Zhang Delong, feeling smug, shouted, "I told her earlier. My family is chickens, ducks, fish, sheep, pigs, and cows." With tears still wet on her face, Xiaoyu couldn't help but laugh at Zhang Delong's antics. Just then, she heard him say, "Wife, wait for me at home. I'm coming back to pick you up for the new year." The old man leaned closer to listen and, hearing that Zhang Delong was going to pick Xiaoyu up, yelled angrily, "You little brat, don't forget your father now that you have a wife." Xiaoyu was so amused that she wiped her tears, softly replied, "Okay." Her face flushed with embarrassment, and a broad smile spread across her face, unable to stop.